Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. I'm recording this for the third time because I just made a whole video and I didn't press record. Guys, this is going to be just an overview of why I'm thinking of shorting this stock. This is not financial advice for you, okay? This is just a conversation between us, and I'm going to give you the first steps. This is not technical analysis, okay? Even though I'm a business analyst, I'm not giving you any type of technical analysis in this company. I'm just going to give you my thought process. The beginning of my thought process is when I look at a stock, and I look at a lot of video game stocks for fun, as a hobby, right? And I want to share those conversations with you. You know, this is not going to be about DEI. It's not going to be about any of those things, guys. It's not that kind of video. So if if you came here to tell you that I'm going to short the stock because she's a woman and she should be in the kitchen. This is not the right video for that, right? I judge CEOs based on their performance. You know, when it comes to capitalism, there is no fairer market, right? I don't care if you're green, blue, gray, whatever color you are. You could be rainbow. It doesn't matter. If you do a great job as a CEO and you make me money, I'm investing in your stock. As simple as that. Why am I shorting this company? Well, when I look at Pritchard as opposed to Doug Bowser, real quick overview analysis, again, not financial advice. You know, Pritchard comes from a legal background, right? And this I know because I follow the stock, and this is what I do, guys. I'm moving my desk around here. This is what I do, guys. Look, she comes from a legal focus, right? And she's been involved in a few IP wars where she's become victorious. And that is where the issue of volatility comes in for me. Nintendo is a brand that's born of safety. That is their strength. Technology is not their strength. You know, if you want to get to the core of why I like the Nintendo stock, it isn't even the video games. You know, it's not that. It's that they're stable, right? They're consistent. You can rely on them. And that's the reason I like the stock over a long period of time, because of the way the company does business. But right now, the company's trading at its peak. It just lowered because of the AI, issues that we're having with RAM and all that stuff, right? But the issue with somebody coming from legal, right, is that they tend to censor more because they're lawyers. They're always looking at risk, right? I shouldn't say this because I might say that, this and that and the other, or I want to appease this government. I should do this in order to get that. You know, there's a lot of branches to it, right? But they tend to create more volatility when it comes to a stock that needs to be stable. You know, fans out there, they worry that she might continue to escalate the tone deaf messaging from Bowser. You know, Bowser said that Nintendo Switch 2 owners should earn more money. Just tone deaf. You know, absolutely tone deaf to the culture of Nintendo. Regardless, guys, the president of Nintendo of America, for the most part, not everything, right, but for the most part, when it comes to the direction of the company, is a figurehead, right? But they do have some power. Where do they have power? They have power where it could actually create volatility for the stock. And what do I mean? They have hiring power. They have marketing power, right? So the way they message to customers has to be consistent with what customers expect. If customers see any deviation from the safety that Nintendo provides to their families by having family-friendly properties like Nintendo, like they have Mario, they have Zelda, they have Animal Crossing, those kind of games. If you deviate from that, you're taking away from the company's core strength, and that is the start of my business analysis. And what can happen to a company that doesn't stay at its core? Look at what happened in Disney. Disney got success. When they got success, they hired different people. Those people hired other people of their same, views, right? And those people were more vocal, and they made those products that they wanted to make that were not necessarily aligned with the core value of the company. You can have a progressive media company. That's not a problem. You can make all kinds of things like that. But when your core product is not that, when your core product is of more conservative nature, and you deviate into those realms, that causes stock volatility, right? And for if you're analyzing the company, if you're analyzing the market, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, a lot of people think that when you're investing in stocks, you're going straight up. No, we live off of this. We live off the wave. We want to sell high, buy low. That's the nature of the market. When it's a bear market, when stocks are down, that's where you want to buy. You want to sell them when they're high. You know, buy them low, hold them, sell them when they're high. It's not too bad, right? Just predicting those waves. That's the trick, right? And the only thing you can do that with is with information and analysis. And it starts at a very basic nature. The more familiar you are with a brand or a product, the easier it is for you to know what might happen in the future, because you know the markets, because you've seen it before. You've seen it happen before in many different ways, right? Just like if I told you what happens with X, Y, or Z type of game, you know, in the same way you would recognize patterns in the market sometimes. Doesn't always work that way, but it does work a lot that way. So basically, to put it in a nutshell, what makes Nintendo a good stock for me, and it's that it's stable, and its empire is built on restraint. So when you had all these controversies, for example, of characters and this and that and the other, Nintendo wasn't really part of that. There was a mention of one, two here, but not really. You know, it was the other two that were involved in those kind of issues. You know, and other game companies, of course. And their backbone is family-friendly, safe products that could be put in your home. They could be put in schools. They could be put internationally, right? That's the core business. If you start messing with that, you're messing with the core of the company. If you put an offensive character that's not aligned with these separately in a separate game, that's okay, because you can market that game to specific markets. You don't have to include it in some market, whatever. But if you include it in one of your core properties because somebody has the idea of saying, no, I have to include this character here because I want to make a statement. You know, it doesn't matter what kind of character it is. It doesn't matter because it doesn't fit the Nintendo universe and you're trying to insert it there. That could create volatility, for example. And, you know, when you're the president of a company, you can affect messaging and hiring and things like that eventually trickle down to the end users. And that's eventually what affects their buying perspectives, their buying choices, and that's what creates volatility. And when you're at a peak highs like Nintendo is right now, you know, the only way is down, right? Because I've told you from before, you know, and if you listen to this channel, I don't own a Switch 2. I don't find any value on it. I wanted to get it maybe for the new Metroid, and that turned out to be So I don't feel a need to buy it. When it goes on sale, maybe, yeah, sure. But for me to spend that kind of money, you have to offer me something that I haven't seen before, right? And if you buy it, that's cool, guys. This is analysis of the company itself, right? Analysis of the stock. And when it comes to the stock, leadership actually matters more than hardware. Nintendo, you know, of course, they recently appointed a new president, and that's why I'm doing this analysis. Whenever there's a major change like that, whenever there's a major change like that, I have to look at the stock and see what's going on, especially because Nintendo's core reality isn't Microsoft. It's not the same as Microsoft, and it's not the same as Sony. You know, parents will buy Nintendo without research. You say Nintendo, they'll just buy it. So it's just a different product. It's a different animal. As much as people want to make this a race of three companies, when it comes to Nintendo, it's its own culture. Sony and Xbox are more similar in that way. But that trust that parents have with the Nintendo brand is fragile. And that's what I try to look for, right? Like, what's that diamond that you don't want to crack? What's that painting that you don't want to stain? And it is that. That's why leadership ideology matters. And that's why when I look at this hire, it reminds me of Disney when they're transitioning from a smaller company that had some success with Iron Man before the MCU blew up and all that stuff with Captain America and everything else, right? They're sort of that point, right? They want to go to the next level, but the way they've been doing it hasn't been customer friendly. It's been driven more by getting every single ounce of profit from every product, And then you additionally add to that pressure that the board obviously is giving leadership. You add these different components that create volatility. The only way I see it is going down based on the leadership that they've chosen. If they put in somebody from Japan saying, hey, we're going to get back to our core, we're going to do more Nintendo things, or somebody that was, more aligned with Nintendo in the 90s, for example, that was taking over the company now, I would feel probably differently if they were on the creative side of things. So when it comes to her, I'm not making my choices based on whether or not she's a woman. It's more that she comes from legal rather than a creative side, right? And when people are they come from the creative side. They judge things differently than somebody that handles a lot of law cases, for example, and is concerned with IPs. You could see what happened with Kathleen Kennedy, and I'm not saying that she is a Kathleen Kennedy like a lot of people say there. No, I'm giving that example because at her core, her decision making and her values were different than the core values of the Disney customer. And that really, at the end, if you want to make just a basic analysis, that's what made the stock eventually sink and everything that came out. Am I saying the same thing is going to happen here? No. But what I am saying is that I see enough data points here based on her leadership style, based on her decision making, based on her hiring, that you guys can go and research, of course, that will lead me to believe that this stock will be on a downtrend, and that is why I'm shorting it. All right, humans, if you like this kind of video that is not it's something you would hear anywhere else, it's what I do for work and what I do for fun sometimes when it comes to video games besides playing them. At the core, what I do, my job is I'm assessing risk, right? When you're dealing in situations in life, what are you going to do? You can do something and do it well. You'll get a result. You can do something and screw it up and you'll get another result. Or you could just do nothing. All those three choices have value, and you assign a value to each of them and what the percentages of each could be of happening, and then you make decisions based on that. And that's basically what this was, an exercise for you if you want to get into looking at companies, looking at culture. There's a lot of fun stock trackers that you could just have mock accounts in and stuff like that. You can look at those kind of things. It's pretty cool. I mean, I like doing it. It's not for everybody, and as you're going to see on the views on this video, it really isn't for everybody, but I'm glad that you stopped by, right? And if you like these kind of conversations, guys, make sure that you support the channel by joining it. You'll have an outtake of this video and other videos on there, as well as the videos that YouTube doesn't let me show you anymore. And if you want to pick a subject, you can go up to Kofi. Guys, thank you so much. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.